It is Free Talk Live. Dial toll free. Take control of the airwaves and bring up whatever is on your mind. Our number is 855-450-FREE like freedom. That's 855-450-3733. We do have the Discord on-air call-in line rooms that are open and available to you over at discord.lrn.fm. So hop into one of those, we'll get you on the air, and you'll sound almost like you're sitting here in the studio with me, Ian.
I'm Laurel.
And there's a story that's been in the news now for several days that I've wanted to talk about. And I know you just came across this college admission scandal, Laurel. Yeah. So we should probably talk about that because that's a big headline for the day.
Very interesting.
But the story that has been interesting to me over the last several days now, and it continues, is the power outage in Venezuela. Now, I don't know how close you've been following what goes on in Venezuela, Laurel.
Somewhat, not super closely.
Or what allegedly goes on in Venezuela, because it's hard to really know what it is that's happening there.
It's not safe for reporters to go down there. So
some still are, though.
They're risking their lives.
Of course.
Yeah.
And, I mean, everybody's at risk if you're just walking on the streets in Venezuela, because desperate people, when they're hungry, people get desperate. They start being willing to do things that they otherwise would not consider doing to their fellow man or woman. And so there's constant, snatch and grabs of people walking down the streets with cell phones and armed robberies, people getting stuck up at intersections. There's stories of people driving like food trucks and being waylaid by gangs of motorcyclists who then rob the food truck.
Because they're desperate. I mean, sometimes it's just opportunities, but sometimes it's desperate. There's a quote from Bernie Sanders. It's from an interview in the 80s or 90s, and somebody was asking him, because he was promoting socialism and communism, they were asking him about bread lines in these socialist countries. And he said, bread lines are good because bread lines mean there's bread. Whereas in capitalist countries, the rich have the bread and the poor starve.
It's a ridiculous statement. The poor are clearly not starving in the United States.
But in Venezuela,
everybody is hungry in Venezuela, unless you're just the richest of the rich. It's a great point. And, go to the bread aisle in any grocery store in a so-called capitalist country. And, of course, what we're talking about here is a mixed economy anyway. It's not, a free market or whatever capitalism really means anyway. But in a place where you have a relatively unrestricted market, I prefer the term the free market. I don't think that the free market excludes capitalism or communism. I think it includes both of those as long as they're voluntary. So if you want to have a commune, go ahead. Have a commune.
In a way, a family unit is a communist unit.
You could look at it that way, I suppose. Or a dictatorship.
What's communism?
Well, ideally, communism is from each according to his ability to each according to his need, but it never ends up getting there. It's very centrally planned, and they never end up getting rid of the government that they claim they're going to get rid of.
Centrally planned means the people, the end user, isn't planning it.
Yeah, right, the little people. So in Venezuela, which is a socialist country and the worst on the planet besides maybe North Korea at the moment, because their currency is certainly the worst of all of the world's different government currencies, and that's due to insane levels of hyperinflation. But also central control and central management fails, and we've seen it happen over and over again, whether it's in the Soviet Union or just looking at our own governments and seeing how inefficient the centralized government is here in the United States compared to, say, industry, compared to the more market-based functions of business. And the government doesn't even compare in its efficiency to the marketplace.
Well, this is how equality goes wrong, because the idea, or part of the idea, behind centralized planning or just centralizing power is to make everything the same, to even it out as much as you can. So the idea behind it is equality. This is what's happening in our public schools. They keep centralizing them more and more and handing down orders from a central planning committee more and more, and the idea is
more federal control.
More federal control, but the idea is to sort of end the inequality. But what's happening is they're just screwing everything up and they're making it all bad. It's all equally bad. So centralized planning, because one size does not fit all, and centralized planning,
especially with children and in individuals' education, people don't learn the same way. There's different types of learning, and So here's what's going on. This is, again, this has been going on now for, I think, at least 5 days. Mm-hmm. And this story is the initial one, but there's another one in the New York Times that came out today that this is continuing. But this one tells a good story from the AP. Venezuela's worst power and communications outage Friday deepened a sense of isolation and decay, endangering hospital patients, forcing schools and businesses to close, and cutting people off from their families, friends, and outside world.
Now, who to shut off the power? Was it the government or some insurgency?
Well, the government wants you to believe it was the United States.
Oh,
We'll get into that.
Yeah, we have other things to do.
Yeah. While the electricity returned to some parts of Caracas nearly 24 hours after lights, phones, and the internet stopped working, the blackout was another harsh blow to a country paralyzed by economic and political turmoil. Many of the few shops that were open were only accepting cash because without electricity and the internet, they can't process debit card payments, a common method of doing transactions in Venezuela since hyperinflation transformed the bolivar into one of the world's most worthless currencies. And remember, back in August of last year, the Venezuelan government issued the new Bolivar Soberano, which means sovereign bolivar, to replace the strong bolivar, which is the Bolivar Fuerte, which originally replaced the bolivar. So they're on their third iteration of the bolivar in 2 decades, basically. Uh-huh. And what they did when they replaced the Fuerte, the Bolivar Fuerte with the Bolivar Soberano, was they knocked 5 zeros off of the currency. So imagine going from a 500,000 Bolivar note to a 5 Bolivar note. That's what it became worth. And of course, the hyperinflation has continued since then. But one of the reasons why they had to do this, beyond the trying to pull the wool over people's eyes, which obviously isn't going to work, I would hope, at this point, but because the credit card machines only have so many digit places on them. So if you're ringing up a sale for a dinner and it's in the millions of bolivar, you're over the number of characters that you can actually enter into the machine. It wasn't designed for that. Mm-hmm. So they had to change it was one of the reasons why they changed the currency around. I'm desperate, said Maria Isabel Garcia, a 39-year-old office worker who hasn't been able to cook anything for her 3 young children. She planned to buy empanadas, but had no cash because the bank didn't have any when she was there on Thursday.
The bank had no cash.
No cash. Sorry. You can use your debit card. Oh, wait, the power's out.
Uh-huh.
Another Caracas resident who is diabetic was searching for ice to preserve his limited supply of insulin medication, which, from what I understand, medication on its own is hard to come by in Venezuela.
Once I was interested in how is insulin made, and oh my goodness, that is a long and involved process. So it's not like you can go out and grow your own insulin.
Right.
It is
just cook it up in the kitchen.
Yeah, it is very, very difficult to make.
Venezuelans are accustomed to power cuts, but nothing like the one that hit during rush hour Thursday evening, sending thousands of people on long nighttime treks in the dark to their homes. It reached virtually every part of the oil-rich country of 31 million people, which was once Latin America's wealthiest, but is now beset by shortages and hyperinflation, projected by the International Monetary Fund to reach a staggering 10 million% this year, compelling about 1/10 of its population to flee in recent years. The blackout promptly became a point of dispute between President Nicolas Maduro, who blamed sabotage engineered by the imperialist United States, which, by the way, is the same story that they were portraying in North Korea, because North Korea also had nighttime power outages regularly. Now, maybe they still do. I haven't heard in recent years, but just within the last couple of decades, they had regular nighttime power outages, and the official line from the government is, we are being attacked by the United States constantly.
So basically. No bombs,
right?
No guns, just the power.
Just they're sabotaging the power stations. Those dirty imperialists.
Uh-huh.
So, same excuse here. U.S.-backed opposition leader Juan Guaido, who said state corruption and mismanagement have left the electrical grid in shambles. He said that was the cause, and I suspect that's the correct reason.
So not sabotage, just incompetence.
Right, it's obviously incompetence. I mean, it's the government who's in charge of it. Mm-hmm. And so whenever you put the state in charge of anything, they're going to screw it up. So let's continue here, more on the just disastrous situation. Imagine 5 days with no power.
I can describe that to you when we get back.
It's not easy. There's more coming up here in moments. 855, 450, free. At least they're not freezing to death. It's Free Talk Live. We invite you to join us here. The toll-free number, 855-450-FREE, like freedom. That's 855-450-3733. We've got the Discord on-air call-in line rooms. They're open and available to you over at discord.lrn.fm. And I just noticed that Ala Loca in our Discord server has posted a Reddit Ask Me Anything. You familiar with the Ask Me Anything concept?
I've heard of it before, yes.
Yeah, basically, it's in a lot of cases, it's like a celebrity or something like that. It's like, I'm Samuel L. Jackson, ask me anything. And then they basically spend a whole day responding to whatever questions come in, is the idea. And in this case, it's an Ask Me Anything by someone who says he's in Venezuela, has managed to get some power back, but has gone through 4 days of the biggest blackout in their country's history. So we're going to see. I'll parse through this as we go through the show tonight and see what's. She says that there's some crazy stuff that's being said in this thread. So I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. But you can get in our Discord server over at discord.lrn.fm, and you can interact with other Free Talk Live listeners there, as well as post some show prep suggestions in the News Story show prep room. But there's different rooms in there. There's the On Air Now, which is where most people chat during the show. But there's people there before, during, and after Free Talk Live. It's Ian and Laurel in the studio here tonight as we continue talking about the power outage that is devastating the folks in Venezuela right now. We're living in some very difficult conditions with food allegedly hard to find, although recently we saw another propaganda piece that was produced by RT. Now, of course, RT is funded by the Russian government, and normally I really like their reporting on the U.S. government. In this case, they were reporting that, look at this grocery store. All these shelves are stocked. Everything here's fine. What's all these reports about people waiting in bread lines here in Venezuela? So it's like I was saying before, it's hard to know exactly what the truth is. But one thing's for sure, the government in Venezuela isn't pretending like the power's not out. Okay, so they can't deny this.
So it's just RT.
Yeah, they can't. Well, the RT's not pretending like the power's out either. This was before the power outage.
Okay.
The power's definitely out. Now the claim is, why? That's what the government is saying. Oh, it's the United States. Let's go to your calls and thoughts. You can bring up what you want. Sean in Arizona, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead, listening online at freetalklive.com.
Guys, great conversation. I actually called about something else. But
that's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
When I listen to this thing about government control and what we are subjected to as quote-unquote U.S. citizens, and I don't consider myself a citizen as much as probably a subject or a piece of property of the government, what we're subjected to here is just as bad as what Venezuela does and their propaganda machine. I mean, I'm subjected to somebody telling me that terrorism is so bad I have to be groped or x-rayed in violation of the Fifth Amendment rights I was granted by God to be private in my own humanity and due process. I'm not a criminal before I did a crime. I mean, we're propagandized here probably at a level since 1928 when Edward Bernays wrote the book Propaganda. This machine here makes Goebbels look like an amateur.
Well, there's no doubt that the similar things go on in the United States. It's just more pronounced in Venezuela because, we have inflation in the United States. They have hyperinflation in Venezuela. So they're getting damaged by their government at a much greater clip than we are. The government here has done a good job of, screwing people over the long run.
But I wouldn't say things are as bad here as they are in Venezuela.
Well, no, what he's talking about is the propaganda. And there's definitely plenty of propaganda in the United States. I mean, it starts when you join the government school system.
Yes.
They begin the propaganda there.
I agree.
And then the people who graduate from the government school system then go into mostly government-run colleges. And then they are continued to be propagandized about why we need the government, how important it is, and how great it is to have a government around, a coercive monopoly like this.
That's why free speech is so important and the deplatforming issues on YouTube are so critical.
Sure, but then those same journalists who get educated at government universities then go out to create propaganda in the media. So it's not just you don't get fed propaganda in the U.S. in the government schools. You get it in, MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, all these different mainstream media outlets, which 99% of the time have somebody on the air who's touting how wonderful the government is, even though they may be against, government leader A versus government leader B. They may have an opinion on which thug should be running the state.
And
they
apparently,
still support it.
A lot of these media outlets have been hiring, I suppose they always have, but they've been doing it more than they were before, hiring former government officials to be consultants at these news agencies. And in fact, I heard, and I'll have to look up this article, that somebody at one of the major agencies, it might have been CNN, left because he said that they were just overrun by former government officials that CNN had hired, and now all of their opinion pieces were being run through these government officials, basically. Yeah. I'll have to look that article up so that I'm not fake news myself.
Sean, other thoughts you want to share?
Oh, I'm so glad you call them government schools. I mean, I have a radio show here in Tucson. I call them the government mind laundries because that's exactly what they do.
Did you say government mind laundry?
They're indoctrination centers.
Yeah, government mind laundry, where you go in, a little baby. A baby is this free thinker, A baby's not a baby. Will walk up to, I live in Arizona, will walk up to a scorpion or a Gila monster and go, oh, I'm curious. I'm a thinker. I'm not going to run and hide from something, until they get into the mind laundry, and they immediately instill fear of being what I am as a true anarchist. I'm not an anarcho-capitalist anymore. I'm just an anarchist. I gave up on all of it because of the force and threats and coercion involved. And it starts in kindergarten when the bell goes off. You got to get up and run.
Just like prison. Thanks for the call, Sean. I appreciate hearing from you. That's where else they have bells. From what Mark Edge, who is one of our regular co-hosts here, has said. He spent 8 or 9 years in prison. And they got bells there, too. And buses. 855-450-FREE. That's the toll-free number. Let's go to Matthew in Louisiana, listening online via TuneIn, via that app. Go ahead, Matthew.
Yes. First, Laurel, excellent video last time. The thing that scares me the most is that Ocasio-Cortez is a college graduate.
Okay, so we're talking about the one that I did, and Ian and I were just talking about this before we got on the air, that there's a YouTuber by the name of Mr. Reagan who did an expose on the what are they called? Justice Democrats?
And,
the Justice Democrat who ran a bunch of candidates, and AOC was one of them.
Right, and their percentages rates were not that great, but now it's like AOC is the new it girl, and Nancy Pelosi ain't liking that, so hopefully Nancy Pelosi will do the deed, and we'll just be like, oh, shame, AOC. Now, the thing about what's going on in Venezuela is how are they paying their linesmen, or do they even have any left? I mean, some poor government bureaucrat who's up on his Marxist doctrine but doesn't know squat about electricity has how to repair a high-tension line in one hand while he's sitting there trying to figure out why
this isn't about the lines. I mean, it couldn't possibly be about the lines. This is about their power generation, like the source. If there's a problem, there's got to be a problem there. I mean, not all the lines in the country are going to fail at once. So it's what was, the origination point. That's my, what I suspect. They're talking about perhaps it was malinvestment. They didn't keep up with, the times, upgrading the equipment or whatever. They didn't put the money in the right place. You can hang on if you want here. It's more coming up.
Bitcoin.com is delighted to announce their latest partnership with the gift card specialists at eGifter. With many of the world's leading brands on their roster, it is now easier than ever to get the gift cards of your favorite brands with Bitcoin Cash. To get started, just follow these simple steps. Visit giftcards.bitcoin.com, pick the gift card you want, follow the instructions on your screen, and make your payment using your Bitcoin Cash wallet. Sit tight and your gift card will be delivered to you as soon as it's ready. That's giftcards.bitcoin.com.
Free Talk Live. You dial toll free to join us here. You can bring up whatever you want. Ian and Laurel in the studio tonight. Our toll free number is 855-450-FREE, like freedom. That's 855-450-3733. For years, libertarians have wanted what they now have in liberty.menu. It's a business directory, basically. It also includes digital content creators and events for liberty-minded folks, people who reject the initiation of force and who agree to abide by the ethics of the non-aggression principle. If that describes you, then you ought to be up over at liberty.menu. Whatever it is that you do, maybe it is a business that you run or more than one of them, it's free to list up there at liberty.menu. You can also use code FTL, and you'll get a Free Talk Live listener badge for your profile. We can't give you a discount because it's free. So liberty.menu. Go check it out. As we continue with your calls and thoughts, Matthew is on the line with us in Louisiana, listening via TuneIn. Go ahead, Matthew.
Okay, well, the other thing I would suggest then, if it's not the lines, then it's probably deferred maintenance.
Yeah, that's basically what Ian was saying.
Yeah, you're supposed to change out the bearings, and, that means that costs a Sovereign Bolivar, and it'd take a lot of Sovereign Bolivar to buy those bearings from our new buddies, the Russians, and, well, let's put that off for a little while until you're
right. This is a government that, just to be clear, can't even pay its own bill to print money. Okay, so it was like a year ago that we reported on this story. Now, by now, I think they've found another printer and they've managed to pay them because they've launched a whole new currency. But there was a time at which they had a few $1 million bill, a debt with a private money printer. So the government bank there doesn't do its own printing. They hire it out to a private printer called, at least it was called LaRue, I think. It's like apparently one of the world's largest, if not the largest, private money printer. And so they had a huge bill with LaRue, and they weren't paying it.
Now I want a career change. I want to be a private money
printer. Yeah. Well, they're not taking what they're printing, right? Like they're only going to accept other world currencies. So Venezuela can't pay its bill with LaRue with the money that LaRue prints from them.
Right.
So, I mean, if they can't even afford to pay for their money, there's a good chance they're not being able to afford a lot of things within the government.
Well, it's just a more magical thinking from socialists. It's the same way they treat their oil wells. Just open them all the way up, and money flows out of them. Wrong.
Yeah, well, they've been failing at the oil business as well. They have not been able to ship out as much as they otherwise could if they were not a government and not centrally planned, because they hadn't kept their, I don't know what they call them, frigates or these gigantic oil boats, basically. Right. Tankers. Tankers. They didn't keep them up to spec, and so they weren't passing international muster, and they weren't allowed to get into international waters, basically. So I understand it. Again, this is another story we've reported on within the last couple of years.
Because of environmental regulations?
Well, I don't know what it was. They just didn't have them up to spec. Huh. They weren't up to international, quality levels to be considered a viable boat on the water, essentially.
Their oil is very heavy, and I'm willing to bet you that they cannot run oil-water separators there. So they're loading oil that is very well contaminated with salt water from the oil wells, and it's rusting the hulls.
Matthew, thanks for calling in tonight. I appreciate your thoughts. So let's go to Russell. He's in Illinois, listening online. Go ahead, Russell.
Yes, hello. You guys were talking about the movie Unbreakable last week. I was just curious if you guys know about, there actually is kind of a true story about, they didn't make the movie based on a true story, but there's actually an individual true story similar to the story Unbreakable. I don't know if you heard about that.
I was here for that conversation,
but the person who had seen the movie is not here this week.
Yeah, so you're welcome to share whatever it is you want to share about it, but it's hard for me to comment.
Well, the movie is based on genetics. Have you seen the movie? Do you understand the movie, or do I have to kind of?
I don't think I've seen it.
I haven't seen it.
Okay, well, Samuel Jackson plays the villain. He has a very genetic bad disease, so he figures there must be somebody exactly the opposite of him in the world, and that's Bruce Willis, which is a superhero. Okay? Follow me so far?
Yes.
Okay, well, there actually is a true story like this. If you want to look on the internet, the title, you have to look. It's hard to find things on the internet like it used to be. You almost have to have the exact title of the article anymore. I don't know why that is. But the title article is Do-It-Yourself Scientist, the Olympica, and the Mutated Gene. And this lady that has been sick all her life, finally figured out by herself, okay, without doctors, that she actually had 2 rare genetic diseases. Okay. And then there's this Canadian bronze sprinter, one of the best in the world, that she saw her one day, and she has the exact same muscle definition that she had. So she figured out that she had the same gene, but for some reason, the gene in her made her stronger instead of weaker.
Now, how did she figure this out? Just by looking at footage of a sports or of an athlete? I'm not clear on how that happens.
Florida. I mean, she's been researching. She's like her do-it-herself scientist. So she's been researching her diseases all her life. So her sister actually showed her a picture of her name. The one that's sick is called Jill Viles, and the one that's is the Olympic is Priscilla Lopes-Schlepp. And so her sister showed this picture, and yes, she basically, when she saw the picture, she realized that she had the same gene.
All right.
Incredible.
And what did that lead to?
She actually, there was a guy that wrote this book called The Sports Gene. She got a hold of him, and he got a hold of the Olympic, and they actually became best friends. She got the Olympic to actually get genetically tested and prove that she had the same gene.
Okay.
So I just don't know if you would find that interesting.
Does that lead to? I mean, is there like a conclusion that that's supposed to bring me to? Because I'm sorry, I'm not a scientist, so like it doesn't, necessarily. I'm like, oh wow, that's really cool. Is that supposed to be? Does it lead to something? Have they like transferred blood, or I mean, what happened?
It's just it leads to a whole nother genetic scientific, ideas.
Okay, so you're saying you believe something could come out of this.
Okay, so I found this on the internet. Uh-huh. I looked it up just like you said. Okay, so Lopez-Schlepp has a gene mutation and was diagnosed with Duchenne-type lipodystrophy. The diagnosis came from research conducted by Jill Viles, a muscular dystrophy patient who spotted physical similarities between herself and Lopez-Schlepp and encouraged her to undergo genetic testing. The results confirmed lipodystrophy and alerted Lopez-Schlepp to a potential pancreatitis attack due to the high levels of fat in her blood, though this was avoided by modifying her diet. So it wasn't so much that Jill Viles was saved by this.
So the researcher helped the athlete. I see now. Yes. Okay, gotcha. Russell, thanks for the call tonight. I appreciate it. The toll-free number here is 855-450-FREE. Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
855-450-3733. So to start the show out tonight, we brought up this story about Venezuela continuing to suffer massive blackouts across not just Caracas, but apparently the entire country. And this, of course, is taking an already bad situation for the people there, where it's allegedly very difficult to get basic food items, get medicines.
So I was going to say what happened when I was in a situation where there was no electricity for a while. This was Hurricane Ike. This is when I was living in Houston. And actually, my family and I, we bugged out. We went to Waco, where I have family living there. It's about It's about 3 hours away. So we played it safe. We went there. And then I left the kids with my mother after a week and came back to see if the house was still standing, how were things going. And I will tell you more about that after we get back from the break.
More coming up here. Your calls and thoughts are welcome. Our toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. Plus, there's an Ask Me Anything from a Venezuelan man who, or woman, I'm not sure, who is in the midst of this. And we'll continue. 855-450-FREE, like freedom. This is Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live. You dial toll free, bring up anything you want. Our number is 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. We've got the Discord on-air call-in line rooms over at discord.lrn.fm. Question on the Ask Me Anything for a gentleman from Venezuela calling himself Alfonso. Question: what do you think the many leftists in the first world claiming the problem in Venezuela or the problems in Venezuela are because of the CIA, and that Maduro, who's the president of the country, is blameless for everything? In addition, as I understand, there's a clause in the Constitution that says the National Assembly can remove the president from power via a vote and elect an interim leader like they did with Guaido. How accurate is this? The answer from Alfonso, he says, saying that Maduro is blameless for everything is such a BS claim. Those words come from people that never visited Venezuela and only inform themselves from left-wing blogs that spread lies. As for the clause in the Constitution, we didn't remove the president. Its previous period just ended, and the next one was illegal because the last elections were considered a fraud. I know it's a very tricky subject, but I think you'll get it if you read this article. And then he links over. What's going on there is they had an election. Maduro won. I'm putting air quotes around that. And basically the other side had protested the election, saying it was essentially an unfair, just a scam, basically from top to bottom. And the other side said, this is our president, Juan Guaido. We are, this man, we elected him. And so you basically have two different people claiming that they are the, legally elected president there. And then you have other governments from around the world that are kind of taking sides. So Russia and Cuba and a couple other places are backing Maduro, the old president. And
because he owes them money, right? And they want their money?
They're buddies. The Russians have given them military technology and for whatever reason. They're commies, basically. Essentially the remaining communist nations are the ones that are on the side of Maduro. Mm-hmm. So more about the blackouts that are continuing there, and of course you're welcome to join us. Our toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. Don't forget, you can watch us on Twitch. We do have a live streaming video platform there. We're also on YouTube, but Twitch has the highest quality video, so we have HD quality video on Twitch. Go to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm, and that's where you'll find our video feed. And you can follow us there, and then when you do that, you'll get notices when something goes live on that feed.
And you can see me really well now because now there's a camera right on me. Two cameras on me. One of them's right on front of me.
That's right. And it's there over at twitch.lrn.fm. And it's free to watch, so please check us out there. And also, if you have Amazon Prime, you can link up your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account because Amazon owns Twitch. And then you can, if you've got, again, Amazon Prime, you can assign us your free Twitch subscription every month. So because you're an Amazon Prime user, you get one free Twitch subscription. Maybe you didn't know that. You get it. If you don't use it, then Amazon just keeps the money. If you do use it, then Free Talk Live and LRN.FM get a couple bucks from that. So we appreciate it if you do that. And the instructions on how to do it are right below our main video window on twitch.lrn.fm. Back to the story from the AP, just kind of taking a picture of what it's like there in Venezuela, where already life was pretty difficult, according to many of the people living there. Now they don't have any power, and it's been that way for most of a week. Basically, it started Thursday during afternoon drive, people going home from work.
So I'll give the rest of my story of there was no power for a week. So I came back after a week, just me. I'd left the kids.
After it was already out for a week?
It was out for a week, and I came back without the kids just to check everything out. And my house had electricity, but I lived on the very edge of the city. And I went in to go and see if I could get some groceries and stuff. And that's when you just start to sort of feel this tension. Apparently, and I learned this because of this experience, all across the United States, maybe this is throughout the West, we've got about a week. We've got about a week without electricity before people start to lose it. And we were just getting to that point because everybody, it's a hurricane-prone region, so everybody knows that, and they have about a week of emergency food. They've got a week of food. They've got a week of water. They've got a week of gas. Mm-hmm. And we were right at that end of the week. And so people were driving around very slowly looking for stores, any store that had lights on, because they wanted gas. Oh, and I learned this. All of our gas stations, the tanks rely on electricity to get the gas out of the tank. So even though the gas station has gas, they can't get it out.
Well, they must have a generator at some of those gas stations.
You would think, but no. So people were driving around very slowly looking for gas, looking for water, and looking for milk
and driving
eggs.
Slowly to conserve the gas.
And driving slowly to conserve the gas, and also just to look, because it's a city, so there's a lot. So they're looking around. Is there any store I don't usually go to, a convenience store? And and you can just sort of feel this tension as everybody's running out of stuff. And if another week had gone by, they got electricity
And this is
back.
a city of like 7 million people or something like that, right? Like it's a lot of people.
It's a very
Houston.
big city. And so I wonder, in Venezuela, they were already pretty hard off. I don't know how much of a difference it would make. But certainly that's the breaking point for a lot of the cities in the U.S. It's about 1 week.
Not 7 million, 2.3 million, but still.
It's a large metropolitan area.
It's one of the top 10, I think, in the United States.
Yes.
So you felt the tension between people.
Indescribable. Well, also, it's a very hot part of the country, and nobody had air conditioning. And nobody would live there without air conditioning.
And, a lot of old people will die because they're not getting enough water or whatever. It's usually dehydration that kills people in those situations.
Yeah.
So how long after you got back did the power come back?
It came back on about the next day.
Whew.
So,
Dodged the bullet.
They needed it back. There were regions, there are outskirts of the city and some of the suburbs nearby that didn't get it back for a month. But the city got it back after a little over a week.
Elsewhere in the city, in Caracas, Dr. Luz Ardila Suarez, a gynecologist, said many staffers at the hospital where she works were still on the job Friday morning, which was the morning, the first morning after the power went out, because they couldn't get home the previous night. She said the hospital's generators had enough fuel for another day or two, and that she was especially worried about patients in intensive care.
Oh, yeah.
She said there are patients who are connected to machines, and of course, there's no water. The director of Coda Vida, the Coalition of Venezuelan Health Advocacy Groups, reported that thousands of dialysis patients were going without treatment as a result of the blackout. While some hospitals were able to rely on backup power sources, others were completely dark. By early Friday afternoon, residents and pro-government state broadcaster VTV reported power was returning to parts of Caracas. Traffic lights in several neighborhoods were back on, while at one office building the electricity flickered to life and then turned off. Still, Venezuela's economic woes are likely to increase as U.S. sanctions against its oil industry take their toll. Part of an international effort to push Maduro from power, the U.S. and about 50 other countries have backed Guaido's contention that he is the interim president of Venezuela and that Maduro's re-election was illegitimate because major opposition leaders were barred from running against him. Maduro would arrest you. Basically, he would cook up a reason to throw you in a jail cell if you tried to run against him.
As we discussed before, how do we know that this other opposition guy is going to be better? Or maybe he's marginally better. It's hard to be worse. But if he gets in there and we support him and then he does bad things, are we responsible for that?
Well, I'm not supporting him necessarily. I'm just watching.
Right.
He's a socialist. His party's a socialist party. So
right.
It's not going to be that much better, whatever it is. Guaido and Maduro, whose chief backers are Russia and Cuba, planned rival demonstrations Saturday as they seek to energize supporters.
Does it matter if you get backed by Cuba? I mean, can they do anything? Are they just sending well wishes?
They just got internet access in Cuba.
They're sending thoughts and prayers.
We did actually do a story on Cuba last week. They did vote in a new constitution over there, and that new constitution does have in it the idea of private property.
Oh, well, that's good. Does private property include guns?
I don't think so.
Yeah, okay.
But it's a step in the right direction.
It helps.
They have since Chavez, since what's his name, the old dictator in Cuba, Fidel. Thank you, Fidel Castro. Since he passed away, things have changed a little bit.
As Sarah would say, it's a start.
For the better, it really is. They've been allowed to make more decisions with their property. They're allowed now to have some private property. So what happened was the Constitution that they put in essentially legalized the things that had been happening already, which is to say, to allow people to have a little more autonomy over their own lives and decisions and things like that. Just this December, so 3 or 4 months ago, they allowed their individuals to receive internet on their cell phones. So now they actually have a connection to the outside world easier than ever before. And
it's just crazy what's banned in other countries.
Yeah.
We don't even think about it.
It is crazy. And so they just now got like a ride-sharing service in Cuba. Never had that before. Now they have it.
Yes.
So there's some good things that are happening there, and just a little bit of pullback from the gigantic state can make a tremendous difference in people's lives.
It's basically a lot of the stuff that they were already doing. Now they're going to keep doing it. They just won't get arrested for it anymore. We
got more coming up here. We'll get what the Venezuelan state's excuses. What are they saying about this power outage, which continues into today? The story I'm sharing here is kind of one of the initial pieces. I've got one that also came out today. Now 5 days into these mass power outages across the entire nation of Venezuela. 855-450-FREE is our toll-free number. Plus, we got this college controversy scandal coming up, too.
You love Bitcoin. It's the future, right? Well, no, not if everyone stops using it. I mean, think about it. How many places in your town take Bitcoin? One? None? Let's be real. If this Bitcoin thing is ever going to happen, it's going to need your help. The good news is, the guys at AnyPay have your back. We built a website called helpmetakebitcoin.com, and it's a place you can send any business, and they'll be set up to take Bitcoin in 5 minutes. helpmetakebitcoin.com.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You're invited to join us here. The toll-free number is 855-450-FREE, like freedom. That's 855-450-3733. We also have the Discord on-air call-in line rooms over at discord.lrn.fm. Ian with you tonight.
I'm Laurel.
Also, we've been discussing Venezuela and the power outage that is continuing now into its 5th day. It started late Thursday last week, and of course the government is saying it's not our fault. We run the power system, but we didn't do this. It's the U.S. government that did this. We'll get into what they're claiming here in just a moment, but also Ala Loca on our Discord server in the News Stories Show Prep room earlier today posted an Ask Me Anything by a man calling himself Alfonso, claiming he's in Venezuela. And for those that don't know, Reddit has these things called AMA, Ask Me Anything, where celebrities or whoever shows up and says, I'm so-and-so, ask me anything. And so people are asking him whatever they want. One of the questions here for him is, are you able to leave the country? If so, would you want to start a life somewhere else? Because this is one of the big questions is like, this place is terrible. It's a horrible place to live. The crime rate is insane. You can't own a gun legally to defend yourself. So the crime rate's insane. And you've also got a bunch of desperate people who are willing to do desperate things. So, add all the circumstances up, and you've got a very, very dangerous place for people to live, let alone the fact that it's hard to find food, according to many of the people who are living there. Of course, if you believe what RT put out, and it's just no problem. There's food everywhere. Everything's totally fine. While others are saying, studies have been done that show the average Venezuelan has lost basically 12 to 17 pounds in a year just because they're not eating 3 meals a day. They're eating maybe a meal, stretching it out over.
In regard to the question of would you leave if you could, I've dealt a lot with refugees and asylees. For the audience members who don't know, I'm an immigration lawyer. Yep. And my experience with refugees and asylees is they're qualitatively different from just about all other immigrants in that refugees and asylees all want to go home
back,
but they don't want to go to home as it is now. They want to go back in time and go back to home where it was before. So they're very hard to integrate into society because their heart's not in it. They didn't really come willingly. They're grateful that they're safe, but they want to go home.
And indeed, he says, I don't have a passport, and something as simple as getting a new one is almost impossible. And then he links over to an article that explains, it's in Spanish, but I did translate it to take a look at it. It's basically out of the reach of anybody. You can't afford it.
Right. Incidentally, for people who are applying for refugee status or asylum status, they don't need a passport.
They just need to get there.
They just need to get there. The problem is getting on the plane. It's the airlines aren't going to let them on the plane.
Right. So you have to get on a boat or something like that. Government officials, he says, want you to pay enormous amounts of money. And I honestly don't have that much in my account with my work as a writer and comedian. He says, if everything keeps worsening, my last option is to leave the country with my ID to a South American country like Argentina or Colombia, but I can't go anywhere at the moment as my family depends largely on me. So there's a lot of reasons why people stay, even in a bad situation.
It's one thing for an able-bodied adult to hike to safety. It's another thing altogether if you have small children.
Or somebody in a wheelchair, an old person or something like that, right? Then going on here, another question from somebody, and this is more of a statement than a question, but it's relevant. It says, first of all, I'd like to say I hope you and your family and friends are all doing okay or as best as you can be with the situation. My question is this. Did you ever think growing up that this would happen? How long ago did you come to the realization of, this is happening? My sister-in-law is from Venezuela. I had no idea the troubles you guys were having until a few years ago. Her parents came for Christmas, and they were shocked at the amount of foods and types of different choices of foods that we have at grocery stores here. He says he's in the U.S. I was heartbroken that they were buying extra suitcases and stuffing them full of, take a guess.
Honey?
Toilet paper.
Toilet paper. I don't know why I guessed honey.
There's a huge problem.
I bought honey today, so
there's a huge problem with no toilet paper. Toilet paper is very hard to find in Venezuela, and it has to do with the money situation there. It doesn't have to do with the fact that there's no toilet paper. There's plenty of toilet paper. Somebody's more than happy to sell you a pallet full of toilet paper if you can pay them in dollars. Mm-hmm. They're not going to take the Venezuelan bolivar for the toilet paper.
Maybe you can use the bolivars instead of the toilet paper.
It's going to get that bad, but they're not going to do that, and in order to get dollars, you have to get them on the black market, basically, or you can accept them, in public. But I think there's some level of risk to doing that. Although what we're hearing in the blackout is that more people are spending dollars at legitimate stores. You're not supposed to be able to do that. There's like a government policy basically that says you have to use the bolivar. If you go into the bank, you can exchange $1 and get bolivar. But you cannot do the reverse. You cannot get dollars out of the bank in return for bolivar.
And this is something we discussed on a previous broadcast, is that when just about everybody in the country is breaking the rules because you really can't live by the rules anymore, then it gives the government the opportunity to arrest anybody at any time and then say, oh, well, you broke this law. So basically everybody's a lawbreaker and they can pick and choose when to arrest people.
Precisely. So Alfonso, who's the Ask Me Anything person, says, thanks for the support. I didn't realize how effed up we were until I was about 15 years old and Chavez started to really ruin the country. Then he died and Maduro basically completed the destruction. I've never known another government. For more than 20 years, Chavismo has governed my country. I'm only 22, and I don't know how it feels to have something different. We continue here with your calls and thoughts, of course, are welcome. We're sharing the story from the AP, one of the initial pieces that I think was published on Friday about this blackout, where state-owned electricity operator blamed the outage on an act of sabotage at the Guri Dam, one of the world's largest hydroelectric stations and the cornerstone of Venezuela's electrical grid. Information Minister Jorge Rodriguez described it as a, quote, cyber attack intended to derail the whole system. So you got hacked, and that's the reason why there's no power basically across an entire nation? Venezuelan Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez echoed the official line, saying there had been a, quote, new aggression against the country's power system that was aimed at destabilizing the country. The leadership of the security forces has remained loyal to Maduro despite appeals from the opposition to turn against him.
Even if you got hacked, wouldn't you be able to get it back up online after just a couple of days?
You would think, right?
Yeah, I'm not a computer expert, but I would think that as long as the equipment isn't damaged and the equipment doesn't need to be replaced, you should be able to get it back. Yeah, reboot.
Reinstall the operating system.
Unplug it and start it up.
You got a backup, right? Yeah. Every professional should have a backup, especially one that's, the whole country relies on. And if it's true that they actually have only one real source of power generation, that's also a problem. I mean, that's a, organizational issue with how your power system's set up.
Yeah.
You ought to have some other ways of generating power. Again, I'm not a power expert or anything like that, but the more points you have of, power sourcing, the more impervious you would be to any kind of failure like this. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Maduro was to blame. He wrote on social media, quote, Maduro's policies bring nothing but darkness. No food, no medicine, now no power. Next, no Maduro. We can only hope.
Of course, when he says things like that, it almost sounds like he did it. If he says this is bringing us toward Maduro leaving, maybe that doesn't help the point he's making.
High-ranking officials has been accused in U.S. court proceedings of looting government money earmarked for the electrical system. Venezuelan authorities routinely accuse the opposition of sabotaging infrastructure, though they rarely provide evidence. The government keeps home power bills exceptionally low, just a couple of dollars a month, relying heavily on subsidies from the Maduro administration, which is under increasing financial duress. Venezuela's normally hyperactive social media was muted during the blackout. Those who managed to get a signal used hashtag sin luz, which means without light.
So Venezuela basically at this point is what is referred to as a failed state. I was looking up all of this stuff recently. A strong state, weak state, failed state. And one of the hallmarks of a failed state is excessive corruption.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can't keep the lights on, literally. That's like one of the things it says.
To share, they also shared images of cities resembling ghost towns. One user posted a video of a nurse manually pumping air into the lungs of an infant. Others posted photos of long lines of cars at gas stations in hopes of getting fuel. A man anguished that he'd gone 17 hours without hearing from his mother. A little bit more coming up here. Your calls and thoughts are welcome. You want to comment on disasters like this? Government-created, completely avoidable disaster? 855-450, free like freedom. You can join us here. It's Free Talk Live. It's Free Talk Live. Dial in toll-free. Bring up whatever you want. Our number here is 855-450, free like freedom. That's 855-450-3733. Well, one of the things that people were able to do in Venezuela before the blackout started was mine Bitcoin. It was one way for people to actually make some money without having to, go through the traditional get a job method of doing things, because you don't get paid jack squat for working in Venezuela. It's like a few bucks a month, basically, is the minimum wage there. And that's after the minimum wage has been raised, dramatically over the last couple of years just to try to keep up with inflation, which, of course, it doesn't. But people have been mining Bitcoin, but not now because there's no power there. But when you do get a chance, and you do have power, go to Bitcoin.com and learn about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Because as long as you live in most of the world, it's actually a pretty cool thing, and it's pretty useful. You can go to Bitcoin.com and take their Bitcoin Academy. You can also learn how to buy Bitcoin and where you can spend your Bitcoin. You can help yourself choose a Bitcoin wallet, read the latest news headlines about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, and engage with the community on the Bitcoin forum. Head over to Bitcoin.com. It's Ian and Laurel in the studio. Let's go to your calls and thoughts. Gene, the Christian anarchist, you're on Free Talk Live, calling from, where are you at, Tennessee?
Tennessee.
All right, what's on your mind tonight, Gene?
Well, I love a good conspiracy.
Yeah.
I think that what Maduro is saying is very possible. I don't know, of course, nobody knows for sure what happened, but it certainly is possible that the U.S. government would be interested in tearing that country down.
It's possible, but I think this is one of those where there's, what's possible and what's likely? And I think even though, it's possible that what he's saying is true, it's actually much more likely that the Venezuelans just haven't been taking care of the electricity system. But
here's the thing. Their system was pretty modern. They had one of the more modern power systems out there from what I've read.
Until when?
And
it was modern 20 years ago?
No, just recently.
Okay.
But at any rate, what happened, or what they're saying happened, and it's very likely, it's very plausible, was that the hack didn't destroy the computers. Computers are fine. You're not going to have a problem with the computers. What they did was they overran the hydraulic generators. Well, this is what they're saying. Mm-hmm. So they opened up the floodgates and let the generators run over speed. Mm-hmm. Which caused power to flow downline, out of sync, and over the level that it's normal, and basically blew up the entire grid downline. So this is not just a simple reboot the system kind of a problem. This is a problem that if it's as I described it and as I read, then that means their grid's going to be down for possibly years. This is not an issue that can just be turned around and flip a switch and bring it back on. If that's what happened, and the grid, the power went out of cycle and over limit, downline on the grid.
So you're saying they literally burned up the lines, basically.
That is what I read. Now, that's coming from the Maduro side, but at any rate, if that is what happened, they're going to be without power for a long, long time.
So they didn't burn up the lines; they burned up the transmitters, what do they call it? Those stations, transistor stations.
And they could have blown the generators.
Okay, yeah.
I mean,
so it's not the wires, but it's those power sections. It's not the generator, but it's this.
Well, if you overfeed too much power through a wire, you'll melt the wire.
Right. Yeah.
And they could have 80% of the transformers in their grid blown right now, which means they're going to take forever to fix that.
Yeah, transformers take a couple of years to replace because they take, I think, like 2 years to build, and they're only built in Germany and South Korea, I think.
And it's kind of a coincidence that that's the scenario that we're trying to protect against up here. So the very fact that this could have been caused by a hack, and it could have been caused by the secret government backing up here, could have been an experiment and could have served two purposes. Number one, could bring down somebody they don't like, and maybe they could use this as a case study for what we need to do to protect our grid.
That's possible, but I think we're starting to enter into the area of conjecture.
Well, okay, so since we're in the area of conjecture, then let's look at it from another perspective. If the United States government is really on the side of Guaido, and this is the challenger to Maduro, who's the current supposed president in Venezuela, this doesn't really help him, does it? I mean, this actually, if all of a sudden Maduro decides, well, that's it, I'm going to a place where there's power, and I'm leaving, I'm stepping down, and I'm going to Brazil, going to retire there, have a nice day, leaving, bye, and then, then Guaido is now all of a sudden, able to take office. He's inherited a total S show. And I mean, it was already bad as it was, but if what you're saying is true and that the U.S. government actually conducted this hack, that is actually hurting, I think, Guaido. It's putting the nation, if it is as bad as you say it is, in a very, very bad position that's only going to make things much, much worse there. And I guess you could argue things have to get worse before they get better, but I would like to hope that as destructive and stupid as the U.S. federal government can be and frequently is, that they wouldn't have done what you're describing.
Well, first of all, it is all speculation, but it's not speculation that the government is a bunch of dirty, nasty guys who like to kill people. Well, they don't like to kill people, but they
don't care one way or the other, and they'll do it if they want.
Some of them like to kill people.
Well, yeah, but the powers that be don't care if people die, and they don't. If people die, they die. Look at Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Look at we got into the Vietnam War over a big fat nothing burger.
But why not go if you're gonna meddle in this situation? And so far, publicly, we know that the U.S. government has put sanctions on Venezuela. Everybody knows that. What level, the CIA is involved in putting this Guaido guy forward? I mean, there's a good chance that something, they're helping him, right?
Well, I don't think our government cares who's in power. That's not the issue. The issue is getting that oil. So,
well, how are they going to get the oil if you can't pump it out of the damn ground or, pump it anywhere for that matter?
And I thought we also just agreed that it wasn't very good oil.
You rush in there and you offer a helping hand, and then you get the oil. That's how it works.
So you're saying the U.S. government would, bring power experts in there to help retrofit and make things work again?
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to happen.
But wouldn't it be easier to just go in and assassinate Maduro? Again, I'm not advocating that, but as far as, your costs are concerned, wouldn't that be an easier mission than destroying the power grid for an entire nation and all the fallout that comes out of that?
Keep in mind, we've got a cyber war going on worldwide right now with North Korea and everybody else, and this could just be a cyber war experiment. This could be a little, let's see what we can do kind of thing.
Yeah. I think Occam's razor says that this was mismanagement on the part of the government, but it's an interesting theory, and Gene, thanks for sharing it with us here tonight. The toll-free number here is 855-450-FREE. That's the most likely explanation? The one that the government effed this up, basically, the Venezuelan government?
I mean, it just makes sense with everything else that they're doing.
Or in this case, not doing.
Also, before we go, I wanted to say I had a correction to something I said earlier. I was saying that there were a lot of former government officials working at CNN. It was actually NBC, MSNBC.
Okay.
And the article is in the intercept.com.
Well, all of them, Fox News, all of them have a bunch of government people, former government people that are there on their payroll as like the talking heads, at the very least.
Yeah.
So more coming up here in moments. You can join us. It's Free Talk Live.
Go to themorganreport.com and receive updates and insights you will not find anywhere else on the web. You will discover how to grow and protect your wealth under all market conditions. The Free Morgan Report provides interviews, webinars, question and answer sessions, plus mind-blowing videos. As David Morgan says, let my passion create your wealth. Themorganreport.com. themorganreport.com.
It's Free Talk Live, inviting you to join us right here. The toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. Also, we have the Discord on-air call-in line rooms at discord.lrn.fm. With you tonight, it's Ian.
I'm Laurel.
Don't forget, you can join us, like I said, on the Discord server. That's where listeners are hanging out before, during, and after the show. And it's free, so just go to discord.lrn.fm. You can get interactive there anytime you like. We've been sharing with you off and on here some of the questions from an Ask Me Anything directed towards Alfonso, who says he's in Venezuela, managed to get a little bit of power back, apparently, for some amount of time, and got online and said, hey, I'm in Venezuela, and we've been having power outages for the last 5 days. Ask me anything. Question from the audience there. Does anyone you know still support Maduro, again, as the current president of the country? He says no. Pretty much everyone hates him and wants him out of power. There are surely a few supporters, but I don't know them, and they're basically hiding. And then further, another question, how hard is it to buy food, and what kind of food can you buy? He says, yeah, it is amazingly horrible here. Well, right now it's almost impossible. Thanks to the power outage, most of the meat, vegetables, and other perishable food became rotten, and no one is selling or buying it. You can find flour, pasta, and other carbohydrates. Not the healthiest option, however. And we get more here from the media. The first story we shared was from the AP, written the day after the power outages. This one came yesterday from Reuters, where furious Venezuelans lined up to buy water and fuel on Sunday as the country entered its fourth day of a nationwide blackout that has left already scarce food rotting in shops, homes suffering for lack of water, and cell phones without reception. Authorities have managed to provide only patchy access to power since the outage began on Thursday in what President Nicolas Maduro called an act of U.S.-backed sabotage, but critics insist it's the result of incompetence and corruption. The government on Sunday suspended school and business activities for the following day without providing any information on a likely time frame for resolving the situation, leaving many fretting that it could extend indefinitely. The country's worst ever power outage comes as Maduro faces a hyperinflationary economic collapse that he created, by the way, and an unprecedented political crisis. Opposition leader Juan Guaido in January invoked the Constitution to assume the presidency after declaring Maduro's re-election a fraud in 2018. And, of course, that has not yet been resolved. The two sides are continuing to argue and protest in the streets. Angry residents of a Caracas neighborhood, Chacao, on Sunday set up barricades along a main avenue on side streets to protest the continued outrage. Ana Cerrado, age 49, a merchant standing in front of a pile of razor wire and debris, says, quote, "The food we had in our refrigerators has spoiled. Businesses are closed. There's no communication, not even by cell phone." She said further, "No country can bear 50 hours without electricity. We need help. We are in a humanitarian crisis." Lines extended for blocks at fuel stations as drivers queued up for gasoline and buses waited to fill up with diesel. Families stood under the sun to buy potable water, which is unavailable for most residents whose homes do not have power. State oil company PDVSA said Sunday fuel supplies were guaranteed, but only about 100 of the country's 1,800 service stations were in operation due to the blackout, according to the gas station industry sources. Merchants unable to maintain refrigerators in a working condition began giving away their cheese, vegetables, and meat to clients. Other shops had their supplies stolen. A small supermarket in a working-class area of western Caracas was looted Saturday night after protesters barricaded an avenue and clashed with police, according to neighbors and the shop's owner, Manuel Caldera. He said, who's 58, said they took food, they broke the display windows, they stole scales and point-of-sale terminals. I mean, they just took everything. Standing on the shop floor littered with glass, he further said, quote, "We weren't here when it happened. We got here and found all of this destroyed." And, of course, even if you were there, what are you going to do? You don't have guns legally. Right. So, you don't have a way to even the odds against you and an oncoming gang of thieves that might be coming in, or robbers, to steal all your stuff.
Yeah, they would have just been killed if they were there.
The air in the shop still reeked of tear gas from the night before when police had fired canisters to disperse the looters. Two employees were struggling to open protective steel doors that had been damaged by the thieves. Guaido, in a Sunday press conference, criticized severely the government for failing to explain what was going on. He said, quote, "The regime at this hour, days after a blackout without precedent, has no diagnosis." Information Minister Jorge Rodriguez, in televised comments, assured us that the government was taking care of the situation without offering any technical details on what was causing the continued outage. Quote, "While the promoters of hate, death, and violence delight in their destabilization plans, President Nicolas Maduro has ordered a deployment of ministers to ensure the Venezuelan people are attended to." Well, doesn't that make you feel good? There's ministers coming out. He's going to help minister the government to you while you don't have any food.
Makes it sound like a religion.
It does, and that is basically what the state is. I know you probably won't agree with me on that, but the state is essentially a mass delusion, a mass fantasy that people believe there's something greater than themselves. When you talk to the people who work for the state, they don't really know what the state is, but they know they believe in it.
I have had this discussion with clients at some point where at several times when the government tells me that I'm wrong, they tell the client your attorney is wrong, and I have to tell the client, no, actually I'm right and the government's wrong. You see, the person who wrote this is actually a person, and being a government official doesn't make them smarter than me.
Sure.
Doesn't make them better than me. They
want you to believe that it does, though.
Right. So the client finally believes me when I get the government to say, oh, yeah, okay, fine, your attorney's right after all. And then
if you can.
And usually I can. Sometimes I can't. But it's a very eye-opening experience for the client. Incidentally, I do remember, I'm old enough to remember this, when we had to wait in line for gas back in
1970s?
In 79. Yeah, with my dad. I remember waiting. It was very unusual, but it did happen in the United States.
Yeah.
So don't think it can never
happen here. Guaido invoked the Constitution to assume an interim presidency in January, arguing Maduro's reelection was fraudulent. He's been recognized as Venezuela's legitimate leader by the U.S. and most Western countries, as well as a lot of Latin America. Elliot Abrams, the Trump administration's envoy for Venezuela, said Sunday that Maduro is not open to negotiations and seems intent on staying put. At hospitals, the lack of power combined with the absence or poor performance of backup generators led to the death of 17 patients across the country. Non-governmental organization Doctors for Health said Saturday. Power returned briefly to parts of Caracas and other cities Friday, but again went out around midday Saturday.
That's a shame.
Quote, "One can infer from the delays and results of the failure that it was a problem in the lines that leave Guri rather than the plant itself," said Miguel Lara. Guri was the hydroelectric power plant, a former president of the state-run entity responsible for the electricity system. The extent of the blackout on the country's crude oil production, the source of nearly all of their export earnings, remained unclear. Most of the key joint ventures between PDVSA and their foreign partners run on their own generators, but many fields in the western Zulia state do depend on the grid. So that's the update there for you on what's going on in Venezuela. It's an absolute mess, and it's tragic. I mean, people are in a very dire circumstance there, and it was all, in my opinion, completely avoidable. This has to be incompetence from the government. This has to be failure on the government. Although some are saying, the U.S. government was somehow involved, that there might have been some kind of a hack. Who knows what the truth is? But for the people that are hungry right now in Venezuela, for the people that are, scraping by to survive this, I doubt they really care too much what the real story was. They're just trying to find out where their next meal is going to come from. So if you want to comment, you're welcome to join us here. The toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. Coming up, we'll talk about people with way too much money. And you've got a story, Laurel, of what they did with it.
Oh, yeah.
They essentially bribed their way. Some people apparently bribed their kids' way to get into certain educational institutions.
The fancy schools. They paid hundreds of thousands or even millions in some cases.
I mean, normally college is expensive.
Right. But this was just to get in. This was a bribery scandal. It's pretty widespread and amazing. There have been a number of high-profile arrests.
We'll get into that coming up here in moments, and your calls and thoughts are also welcome. The toll-free number is 855-450-FREE, like freedom. That's 855-450-3733. We also have the Discord on-air call-in line rooms. They're open and available to you. Just jump into one of those, or the top 4 rooms on our Discord server. Pick one. We'll see you there, and we'll join you. Go to discord.lrn.fm, and this is Free Talk Live. We've got plenty of time coming up for you, your thoughts, and this college scandal on the way on Free Talk Live. It's Free Talk Live. Dial in, toll free to bring up whatever you want here, whether it's comments on the disaster in Venezuela that's now been made even worse by them having no power for the last 5 days. With you tonight, it's Ian.
I'm Laurel.
Don't forget, you can join us online anytime you want. Head over to freetalklive.com, and you can help us out by becoming Free Talk Live amplifiers like Roscoe S., who is a silver amplifier, which means that Roscoe's giving $5 a month through the AMP program. And you can do it with PayPal, you can use credit card, you can use Bitcoin, BTC, and it's money that helps us advertise, market, and promote Free Talk Live, which means it helps us get on new radio stations around the country, bring new internet listeners on board with the program, and that's a good thing, because more people hear the ideas of freedom, because sadly we're the only show in syndication that is actually consistent in promoting the ideas of freedom. So if you like what we're doing here, please join the AMP program at amp.freetalklive.com. Of course, you'll get some perks, you'll get some benefits as being a Free Talk Live amplifier, like access to the special supporters chat rooms on our Discord server or the AMP-only Facebook group, and more. Get all the details and get signed up over at amp.freetalklive.com, amp.freetalklive.com. Laura, let's change gears here from the tragedy in Venezuela to the scandal that hit the news. I heard it this morning on the news and the radio, so this is a pretty big story.
Yeah, I found out just a little while ago, actually. This is the story from NPR. The title is U.S. Charges Dozens of Parents, Coaches in Massive College Admissions Scandal. Apparently what was going on was a lot of these parents were hiring a consultant who was just falsifying everything on the application. Like, they would say they were in sports that they weren't in. Mm-hmm. They would stage photographs. They were getting fake test scores.
So the parents presumably knew that this stuff was happening.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't just hire somebody who did all that stuff secretly.
No.
They were in on it.
And they were paying, as I said, hundreds of thousands of dollars, in some cases millions of dollars. So that's
insane.
This was quite a scandal, and they've got a lot of high-profile arrests, including 2 actresses, Lori Loughlin and Felicity Huffman.
I know Lori Loughlin was in Full House.
And then Felicity Huffman was in Breaking Bad.
Really?
And so, yeah, Felicity Huffman has been arrested, and she's released on $250,000 bail. So this is hardcore, and this is a lot of fun. And what she's being charged with, Felicity Huffman, is mail fraud and wire fraud, because a lot of this fraudulent activity was done through the mail or through the internet. So that's the actual charge. And the police investigated on this, and they are calling it Operation Varsity Blues. This is the story from NPR. It says, federal officials have charged dozens of well-heeled parents, including actresses Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin, in what the Justice Department says was a multi-million-dollar scheme to cheat college admissions standards. The parents allegedly paid a consultant who then fabricated academic and athletic credentials and arranged bribes to help get their children into prestigious universities. So in some of these cases, it wasn't just falsifying the application, it was also bribing the school officials.
Yeah. Yep.
We're talking about deception and fraud, fake test scores, fake credentials, fake photographs, bribed college officials. Andrew Lelling, U.S. Attorney for District of Massachusetts, said at a news conference Tuesday in Boston. Lelling said 33 parents paid enormous sums to ensure their children got into schools such as Stanford and Yale, sending money to entities controlled by a California man named William Rick Singer in return for falsifying records and obtaining false scores on important tests such as the SAT and ACT. Now, I'm not sure. I was scanning the article. I'm not sure whether they just completely falsified the records for the SAT or ACT, or whether they had somebody posing as the student
to take the test.
Go and take the test, which is how it's done sometimes.
Huh. You know, it's been so long since I've been in school, I don't remember what taking those tests was like. I don't think they checked ID.
They do now.
Do they now?
My son just recently took the SAT, and we had to send them a photograph in advance of him, and then, he shows up and he's got the photograph, and they needed his school ID, and so they were checking. And I think the photograph that we sent them also goes to the schools when they get the scores.
Well, I guess if you are bribing the person at the school who's receiving the fake score, then they're not going to do whatever check they would normally do. I don't know how that works, right? Like, you submit information claiming you got a 1600 on the SAT. I think that's the top score you can get, right?
Yes.
So you submit that claim that your daughter got a 1600, and then you bribe the person to whom you've submitted the claim, and then they just don't call the SAT group or check it,
right? People send the scores directly, I think.
Oh, really?
So I think it would be difficult to arrange for that. So I'm kind of wondering how they did it, if not having somebody go in and take the test for you.
Well, if you pay off the right person, then it doesn't matter.
Right, that's true. If at the school,
yeah, whoever at the school's job it is to verify the claims of the SAT or to verify that the SAT sent it in. If they're on the take, then they can just say, "Yep, checks out."
Right. Singer's clients paid him anywhere from between $200,000 and $6.5 million for this service.
Man.
So what that says to me, just the amount of money that they were paying, is that these prestigious universities aren't just about getting a good job or having a good career. This is about social standing, not only for the kid, but for the parents, because they were willing to pay all of this money.
Right, because college isn't worth that much money.
Oh, no way.
It's a scam.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, this whole thing about, well, we need to pay all of this money to go to these schools so that the kids can have a good career. No, it's about social standing, because you can get all that knowledge for a lot less money than that. And this is one of the problems with our government paying all this money into these universities, or rather lending money to the students. And that's how the taxpayers are paying for all of this. And it's really just paying a group of people to have high social standing. And that's why we should stop doing that.
Well, it's my initial reaction to this story is, who cares? I mean, this, to me, I guess the claim is that they defrauded some of the people at the colleges, or somehow who's the victim here exactly? The people who didn't get in because these people got in? Like these schools obviously have limited numbers of students that they can have in. So if they, 5 of the students were fraudulently admitted because they paid $7 million or whatever it was to get in, that may have prevented a handful of students who otherwise would have gotten in through the normal methods. But otherwise, is that really... those people really victims necessarily? It almost seems like these parents were already victimized in that the fact that they paid $5 million to get their kid into college. That seems like its own punishment.
I think it is the other students. Well, it's the whole system and it's the whole facade, but it's the students who aren't going to get in because these kids paid their way in, and now there's people that maybe should have had that spot. We're supposed to be a meritocracy. And if it's not, you're getting in, if you're not getting in based on your merit, then it really is what the lefties sometimes say it is, which is a pay to play.
Well, it is always that to some extent, because a lot of these schools, they may have some scholarships, but Yale and these fancy Ivy League schools are not cheap schools. Your average person probably can't afford them anyway.
They're sliding scale. So the average person usually at some of these high endowment schools is probably not paying anything.
Oh, really?
There's a number of schools, and Stanford's one of them, that don't charge the family anything if their total household income is $60,000 or less.
Oh.
So it's all sliding scale.
So then the claim is they'll only let you in if you've got the right grades or whatever.
Well, it does. When you're doing that sliding scale, the school basically has to let in very, very wealthy people in order to be able to afford to do that.
Of course.
So it kind of, on the one hand, it seems great. Oh, you can let the middle class kids in and the poor kids in, but it really makes it so that they have to let in some of these very wealthy people in order to be able to do that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that's one of the problems with it. But anyway, they have arrested over 50 people in this.
Wow.
The article says the scope of the case is massive. A total of 50 people have been charged in the admission scheme. More than 36 people in multiple states were taken into custody Tuesday as part of Operation Varsity Blues, as I said earlier. Joseph.
See, another part of this that is problematic is, okay, they're going to take these people into custody. They're going to bring criminal charges against them. Many of them are probably going to take a plea deal. Probably won't go to trial. And some of them might get sentenced to jail. So then all of us are then forced to pay to keep these people behind bars or keep them on probation or, whatever it is the punishment happens to be. So we've all been, if there were victims initially in what they did, it was probably just the students who didn't get into those schools. Now everyone who pays taxes is now a victim of the government trying to punish these people.
These people make millions of dollars, so their taxes, are probably very, very high. So it is actually probably these people who are paying the taxes that are going to.
Well, no, we're all paying it. If everybody pays taxes to some extent or another, even those who don't pay income tax, you're still paying gas taxes and you're paying all kinds of taxes. And then there's, of course, the inflation tax. So everybody is on the hook to put these people behind bars, if that's indeed the goal of what's going to happen here, if that's what they're going to do. And if they're bringing criminal charges, then that suggests that at the very least they want them to believe they're going to go behind bars and, try to intimidate them into taking
They certainly want to discourage other people from doing this.
In the future.
Yeah.
Whether it will or not, of course, is another question. A lot of these people probably believed that they were above the law, that they couldn't be touched because of the amount of money that they have. I'm sure you've got a little bit more to the story here. We can share that. Coming up here as well, your calls and thoughts. Welcome on this college scandal. Is this overblown? Are you as upset about this as some people are? Is spreading the message of liberty, cryptocurrency, and peace around the globe worth $2 per month to you? As you may already know, in addition to our internet feed, LRN.FM broadcasts on free-to-air satellite across North and Central America, as well as Sub-Saharan Africa. And we've been available on satellite for free 24/7 since 2010. The LRN.FM free-to-air satellite signal is reaching some of the most oppressive regimes in the world, and there's no doubt our ideas are making an impact. You can learn more about the channel's impact by watching the 3-minute video at fund.lrn.fm. If you'd like to help free minds globally with our ideas of liberty, cryptocurrency, and peace, you can donate as little as $2 per month via fund.lrn.fm. You can help us continue and expand our satellite broadcast to multiple continents. Visit fund.lrn.fm today, and thank you for your help. Don't forget to share the link on social media. That's fund.lrn.fm.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. Launching into the third hour of the program, major scandal when it comes to college admissions here in the United States, at least around the students or the sons or daughters of rich people who paid big bucks to bypass any kind of actual, hurdles that would normally be in the way of their kids from getting into these Ivy League schools, paying as many as, a few $1 million?
Oh, one of them was $6.5 million.
Yeah, so Ian and Laurel here in the studio tonight. If you want to jump into the discussion, our toll-free number here is 855-450-FREE, like freedom. It's definitely a big scandal, and there's more to say. You've got the story from, where was it? Do you recall?
This is from NPR. But going to your point of, who does it hurt? Well, maybe we should just let them pay their way in. It's sort of, that's part of what the sliding scale is that the wealthy have an easier time getting in. And maybe we should say that's not such a bad thing. At my daughter's school, she goes to a boarding school where the sticker price is $55,000, and that includes per student per year.
Okay.
And that includes room and board and all of the instruction and everything. We don't pay nearly that much.
Really?
Because
even though you're an attorney.
Right.
Okay.
Because the boarding schools do sliding scales very much the same way as the colleges. So we get a big scholarship because the people who are paying full price, the $55,000, are all of the international students plus some very, very wealthy people. Now, my daughter, I've talked to her about this, and I've explained the school's not going to kick those girls out. It's an all-girls school. They're not going to get kicked out. They're going to have to do something really, really awful in order to get kicked out. So you need to be a little more careful. The reason they're not getting kicked out is because the school needs their money.
They're paying big bucks.
Now,
are they obligated to do the sliding scale? Is there some sort of federal rule, or they just do it to make themselves look good
they just do
academically?
They do it to... I think part of it is they want good scores so that the school can stay afloat. And if they just took the rich kids, they might not get the good scores. Okay. So they will bring in some girls who do well on the tests, for real.
But are poor.
We're not poor, but people who aren't.
Well, I don't imagine you're at the very end of the scale either.
No.
Yeah.
But we're certainly not mega rich.
Right.
If we weren't getting this big scholarship, she wouldn't be going. I can't afford $55,000 a year.
Gotcha.
Come on. And because you don't get federal student loans for that. So she it took her a little while, but she sort of understood it. And so now, one of her friends wanted her to go off and do something that would have gotten her kicked out. And her friend wanted her to do it. And my daughter said, no, you go ahead, because if we get caught, You're staying and I'm getting kicked out.
What was the proposal?
I'm not going to say on the air.
Well, she didn't do it, so.
She didn't do it. Well, okay, drugs. It was drugs.
Okay.
She also, of course,
Is this college or high school level?
This is high school.
Okay.
So she also didn't want to do it because she didn't want to do it because that's a weird thing. But she gets to say to her friend, she doesn't have to be, uncool or whatever. Mm-hmm. She can just say, look, they would kick me out. Sure. They're not going to kick you out. And she's right about that. Mm-hmm. But she also uses this. Like, she understands they're basically subsidizing her education. So whenever one of the rich girls is rude to her or whatever, she just says to herself over and over again, they're paying for my education. They're paying for my education. Because since they're there and they're paying all that money, the school has all of these resources and they have this really low student faculty ratio and everything. So my daughter gets that she benefits tremendously by having the rich kids there paying all of this money.
Okay.
So that's an argument for let them come. Let them do the sliding scale so that people who are middle class or working class don't have to pay as much but have access to those same resources. It is effectively a tax, an income tax, a sliding scale tax that allows people to go to these fancy, wonderful schools. In a way, it's not
tax isn't the right word because it's a choice.
It works the same way. It is a choice. You're right. Mm-hmm. And that's an important difference. Yeah. But it works the same way. That allows them to go to those schools.
Tell me more about the situation with these cases. Dozens of people arrested.
Yes. It looks like at least 50, and a lot of them are quite wealthy. These parents
including actresses. The lady from Breaking Bad, whose name was Huffman. Felicity
Huffman, yes.
And then a lady from Full House, Lori Loughlin.
Yes.
Who apparently was out of the country, according to TMZ at the time, but has arranged to turn herself in.
All right. So it says, these parents are a catalog of wealth and privilege, Lelling said. They include, for example, CEOs of private and public companies, successful securities and real estate investors, 2 well-known actresses, a famous fashion designer, and the co-chairman of a global law firm. The parents were already able to give their children every legitimate advantage, but that instead they chose to corrupt and illegally manipulate the system for their benefit. Now, I think part of what the people are being arrested on, they're being arrested for defrauding the government.
Because the government runs a lot of the schools.
Some of the schools are state schools, like the University of Southern California, et cetera. The article says there will not be a separate admissions system for the wealthy, he added, and there will not be a separate criminal justice system either.
Oh, yeah, there will. God. What was I reading recently? The story about Jeffrey Epstein. You familiar with that name?
No.
He's the guy who had he had charges brought against him within the last couple of decades. I think it was in the aughts, so like more than a decade ago, for allegedly molesting teenage girls that he had kept in some level of prostitution, forced prostitution. Maybe it wasn't forced, but who knows? But over the years, he was connected to people like Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, very wealthy, connected politician types. He had his own private island in the Caribbean. I think
I did hear something about this.
He had a jet, an airplane called the Lolita Express, where who knows what actually went on that jet, but people like Bill Clinton and Donald Trump were passengers on that airline. And so ostensibly there were a bunch of underage, under legal age young women who were in his employ and having sex, on demand, basically. And this guy, they had evidence like crazy against him. And essentially the prosecutors just kept dropping every ball they could possibly drop to the point of unbelievable level of incompetence and failure. And essentially he ended up getting a slap on the hand and sent to like the jail for rich people where, he was allowed to have special things that other people don't get access to while they're in jail. Not just minimum security, but like a special place just for him. Like there are jails like this where you can have, I've read about them. There's a great magazine that I get called Prison Legal News, and it kind of goes through news of what's going on in prisons all around, all the corruption and the scandals that just keep coming. I mean, it's just constant news of horrible things coming from prisons. But one of the things they reported on are these special prisons for the rich and wealthy, who end up getting things like iPads that they have access to, special exercise equipment. There's, they're paying in some cases to have access to these prisons where they get special, they might get access to a cell phone. I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff that's out there if you're the right person that you'll be given access to that the average prisoner won't.
Sounds better than my life right now, actually.
Yeah, so his this official's claim that there's not a separate justice system for the rich is total propaganda and a bald-faced lie.
Well, also, if you have really good legal representation,
you'll never go in the first place.
I'm not going to say never, but the chances are a lot lower that you're going to get convicted.
Yeah, I would say odds are good that, not being an attorney, you are, though,
yes.
That they're likely going to plea down whatever these charges are to no jail time and end up with large fines that they'll just then pay to the state. So the state will end up getting even more money out of this. And then they'll act like they did somebody a favor. They'll act like that we should thank them for what they did. When really all they just did was just milk these people for even more money. Right. Oh, we caught you being corrupt. Now you can pay us even more. You paid $6 million to get your daughter into school. Well, here, you can pay us another few $100,000 and this will all go away.
So do you think that the schools should really just have like a separate way for people to get in if they pay enough money? Or
I really don't care. I mean, it's
up to the school?
They should do whatever they want to do. Let the market decide.
Right.
If you don't want to go to a school that doesn't have a sliding scale, then don't go support the school that doesn't have a sliding scale. Let people decide where to send their kids to. And if you take in people who are willing to pay, then you've got more revenue coming in. You could expand your operations in that particular case. So I fail to see what the controversy really is. I mean, I understand it's scandalous and everything, but whoopee-doo. There's more coming up. 855 450 free. It's Free Talk Live, inviting you to join us here. The toll-free number is 855-450-FREE, like freedom. That's 855-450-3733. With you here tonight, it's Ian.
I'm Laurel.
By the way, Forkfest 2019 is coming up about 3 months from now, so now's the time to start planning for it. It's going to be June 13th through the 18th. At Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. It happens the 5 days prior to another festival, the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which is entering its 16th or 17th year, depending on how you count it. But Forkfest is an alternative that kind of came out of the idea of there ought to be a festival that is not created by an organization, that is not organized by a board of directors, that there's nobody who is really in charge of, and that's what Forkfest is. It is decentralized. So it doesn't really exist. It's just these 5 days in this campground, and whatever happens, happens. If you want to create a thing for people to do, then you can create that thing. Maybe you want to have a lecture series, you want to have a musical event, you want to have a party, you want to have, a poker game. You can do those things. You just have to, do whatever you need to do. Rent a tent and get the campsite and put it all together on your own. So it's up to you. Or you can just relax and go camping with other liberty-loving people like voluntarists, libertarians, and anarchists. Go to forkfest.party. There's an unofficial Telegram chat and forum that you can link through to the website. Again, it's June 13th and through the 18th in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire at Rogers Campground. Forkfest.party to go and learn more. So we were talking about this college scandal, and I failed to really see, why these things are considered crimes. Not real clear who the victim is in this case. But nonetheless, the headlines are all over the place. And, of course, it's a big deal when the wife of the bad guy in Breaking Bad, who, wasn't such a great character herself, ends up actually, apparently, according to TMZ, had guns pulled on her at her home when the FBI came up.
I think so, yeah. They arrested her.
They arrested her at gunpoint, according to this story.
Well, that seems unnecessary.
It does seem unnecessary.
It's not a violent crime.
No.
So, yeah. You're not supposed to draw your gun unless you're planning on shooting.
Maybe they watched too much television and figured she was more like her character on the television show that she was on, Breaking Bad.
So. Here's one thing. Here's one sort of victim, and it's sort of roundabout and indirect. But if you paid a lot of money to go to a school, I mean, the whole idea is that they're paying all this money is that certificate is supposed to mean a lot when you're going to employers.
Mm-hmm.
Now the employers don't know whether you just paid your way in or not. So whereas previously it was supposed to show your merit, now it doesn't. So it cheapens the certificate for people who paid a whole heck of a lot of money for it and worked really hard.
Yeah. Well, it's hard for me to really shed any tears over that because, I mean, I don't really value the college certificate at all. I find that the whole thing is a scam, basically, from top to bottom.
I agree.
So anything that actually makes it less valuable, I think, is ultimately a good thing. So was there more that you wanted to share on this, or should we talk about something else?
This is getting into a lot of the details of exactly what people did. Oh, and incidentally, for the test-taking stuff, it says that it wasn't so much that they were falsifying the scores between the SAT committee or organization. It was that they were sending people in to take the exam for the kids.
Really?
Or they were bribing the proctor to let the kid take extra time, and then the proctor would fix the exam afterwards, or the proctor was taking the exam for the kid.
Wow.
And sometimes the kids didn't know. And they were paying the proctors anywhere from $10,000 to $75,000 to do this. Now I want to go proctor an exam.
Bonus.
Yeah. $75,000. Shoot, I'll do it.
What do you think they get paid per day without that?
Yeah, I think it's like $10
$20 an hour or something like that.
All they're doing is sitting there,
Just sitting there collecting tests, making sure people aren't cheating. So if you want to join us here, the toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. There was a story last night that actually wasn't last night. It was Sunday night. Richie Rich brought in, and it just seems so interesting. I wanted to share it. We just never got a chance to get to it. It's about communication. And so it doesn't always have to be the news here on Free Talk Live. It can be a story about how to make your life better. How are you? These are the 3 most useless words in the world of communication. And it's a phrase that I've effectively banned from this show. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't make a point of not doing it, then people will default to this phrase when they call in. Like if you just go to a phone call from somebody, it's like, it's Joey in, Bartlesville. And then Joey's like, how are you? You're like, how are you? And it's just a time waster.
Meaningless.
Yeah, it's just a time waster. And as it points out here in the story from CNBC.com, the person asking doesn't really want to know.
I've discovered that if I start actually answering the question truthfully, I get this look on the face like, what are you doing?
Right. They just wanted to say something.
Say fine.
Right. They wanted you to say fine so they could just say something else, right?
Exactly.
And the person responding inevitably doesn't tell the truth because a lot of people say fine when they're not really fine. Maybe they had a really bad day, but they don't really want to talk about it. So they just say that they're fine.
You're allowed to say, I'm fantastic if there's something especially good.
Yep,
You're just not allowed to complain.
What follows is a lost opportunity and meaningless exchange with zero connection. But the key to making the most out of small talk, according to Harvard researchers, is to simply ask the other person follow-up questions in a series, and this is, by the way, the key to good communication, period. But in a series of experiments, researchers analyzed more than 300 online conversations and found that... online conversations aren't the same as real life, but regardless, and found that those who were asked a more meaningful follow-up question, like questions that aren't how are you or what do you do, found the other person much more likable. Quote, when people are instructed to ask more questions, they are perceived as higher in responsiveness, an interpersonal construct that captures listening, understanding, validation, and care, wrote the researchers. So how do you move from tongue-tied to being a charismatic and interesting person? It depends on the question you start with, and then you can focus on the stream of follow-up questions. So here are 7 tactics, according to these Harvard researchers, to having a meaningful conversation. Number 1. Use the ACT trick to start a connection. When was the last time you were in a meeting that didn't start with small talk? It's a natural way for people to connect. Start with a question that will build up to a conversation that meets the ACT criteria. A standing for authenticity. C, there's a connection. And T, there's a topic that will give them a taste of who you are. Some of those questions might be, what's your current state of mind?
That would be weird if somebody asked me that.
It would be, but it would get you to give them a different answer, maybe.
It would.
It'd get you thinking.
That's true.
About something like, oh, wow, that is a different question. Maybe I should give this person an honest response. What are you looking forward to this week? That's a pretty good one.
That one's good, yeah.
That's kind of like, that opens the person up to a fairly wide range of potential responses instead of just fine, right?
Right. And it keeps it positive. It's what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. One of mine that I like, and I, by the way, not great at doing this, but I've practiced a little bit at it. Just generally, I mean, I hadn't read this until the last couple of days, but a good one that I like when meeting somebody new is, what do you like the most about what you do? Rather than just asking them what they do, asking them what they enjoy about what they do. Because a lot of people want to complain about their job, but if you ask them what they like about it, then it keeps them positive, keeps them focusing on things that are good. So what are you looking forward to this week? Again, that opens up a wide range of potential responses, and it allows them to select one of the things that to them is most exciting. And if they tell you about something that's exciting to them, they're going to be interested in you, even though they're just talking about themselves. The toll-free number here is 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. More of these tips on better conversations with people. Making small talk less small, basically, is the way I look at this story. 855-450-FREE. If you want to call in with your suggested questions and how you have conversations with people and make them better, it's Free Talk Live. Are you a cryptocurrency advocate? The Crypto Tip is the ideal outreach tool to help new people discover cryptocurrency. It's a printable business card-sized tip that you can give to service providers, preferably in addition to a good cash tip. When the server scans the QR code, it'll bring up an explanation of cryptocurrency, how to install a wallet, and allow them to claim the tip. If they don't claim the crypto, you get your tip refunded to you after a time period you specify. Plus, if they do claim the tip, you get an email alert. Create as many tips as you want at cryptotip.org. That's cryptotip.org. This is Free Talk Live. You can bring up whatever you want. Take control of the airwaves here at 855-450-FREE, like freedom. It's 855-450-3733. We've got video clips now, thanks to the return of Eric Freerock. He has been cranking out a couple, usually one or two clips per day on clips.freetalklive.com. It's actually his own YouTube channel. It's called Liberty Bits. And it's great to have him back because it's a lot of work to do video editing. And honestly, I just don't have the time to spend on it.
It is a lot of work.
And yeah, you're doing your own YouTube channel as well at YouTube/Laurel's channel.
Laurel's channel,
okay.
Yes.
And folks can follow you over there, but also go to clips.freetalklive.com. That'll take you right to the Liberty Bits channel. You can hit the subscribe button on that, or you can follow us on social media like Twitter at twitter.freetalklive.com, on Mastodon at toot.freetalklive.com, or Telegram on telegram.freetalklive.com. And then the video clip links, when they're posted, automatically go to those social media. So if you can see the clips there and share them if you don't mind. If there was a segment of the show that you really enjoyed and it makes it into one of the video clips, then please share that around. That way we can bring some more listeners into Free Talk Live and share the message of freedom with people that you care about. So it's Ian and Laurel here tonight. Our toll-free number for you is 855-450-FREE, like freedom, as we continue with a story from CNBC about communications tactics and being a better communicator, avoiding the sort of the pitfalls of the all too common phrases of, how are you?
I'm really torn because I want people to call in, but I also want to hear about this story. So
yeah, well, we're going to get into the story for sure, and we'll also take your calls. But the first trick here is the ACT trick: authenticity, connection, and a taste of who you are. So some questions they suggest, instead of like, how are you, is what's your current state of mind? What are you looking forward to this week? This one is a strange one. You remind me of a celebrity, but I can't remember which one. Who's someone you relate to? Again, go with whatever you feel is right.
I would feel like that one was weird.
That one feels forced. Number two, move beyond the, and I wish there were more examples of these questions, because I thought a couple of them. I like the what are you looking forward to this week, and sometimes it's easier to just pick up on what other people do than try to come up with your own. But that is a good one. Number two, move beyond the hourly update. The fallback for a lot of people is like the newscast hourly update: traffic, sports, weather, and so on. Drill this into your head. It's a horrible icebreaker. There are a few exceptions, like if it's a genuine interest of yours and your boss or colleague shares that passion. But try to move beyond those cliche topics to those that are more important and personal to you.
They're probably fine for the elevator when you're just trying to be polite and you don't really want to talk to the person.
Yeah, those are those situations that I think they're actually talking about, in this case, although the elevator is a tricky one because it's always a limited amount of time. You don't always know how much time you have in the elevator. So I used my favorite line that I mentioned to you before about what's your favorite, part of your job. That's a good one that I've always found gets an interesting response. When I was at Anarchapulco, that was my line in the elevator as well, because everybody at Anarchapulco this year at the resort was at Anarchapulco, whereas previous years other people would have been at the resort, just families who would have been at the resort happened to be there. This year they rented the whole place, so it was almost a 100% guarantee that everyone you got into the elevator with was also at the convention. So I would ask them, what was your favorite part of the convention? Just to get them talking about something like that. Number 3, be in the moment and observe your surroundings. Open your eyes before you open your mouth. Find something to focus on in your surroundings, like the piece of art on the wall, a quirky gadget or family picture on their desk, a race car helmet, scattered coins from various countries, and so on. This again is presuming that you're in their place. There's bound to be something that will spark small talk and help lead the conversation into unique follow-up questions.
This sounds like something from How to Win Friends and Influence People.
It does, doesn't it?
Dale Carnegie. He said to do this.
It's a great book.
So, yeah.
If you got time, read that book because that takes this whole thing to the next level. In fact, I was just thinking about that the other night after finding this story and thinking, it's been probably 20 years since I've read that book. I'm
not sure I got through the whole thing. I know I started it at one point.
Maybe I should read it again.
And I've read a number of things about dating manuals. They say, men love to talk about themselves. And I look in the men's,
everyone loves to talk about themselves.
The men's stuff says the same thing about women. Like women like to talk about. How about everybody likes to talk about themselves?
It's true. That's the key to winning friends. And that's if you want to summarize Dale Carnegie's book into one statement, it's get the other person to talk about themselves.
Well, really, you need to get them telling you a story about their lives or themselves, because if it's just an interrogation, they're going to be like, this is weird. Do you have any siblings? Where are you from?
Right.
Well, where did you go to school? If it's just a series of questions like that, no, it's got to be like, what's your earliest childhood memory? And then a lot of people will want to share that.
Let's say you're talking to a CEO of a large, iconic company who's about to retire, and you noticed a row of empty boxes along the wall of the CEO's office. You might start with a question: how hard is it for you to leave this job? This will lead to a much deeper and more emotionally revealing discussion, and it would have never have happened had you not noticed the boxes. Number 4 on the list of 7 techniques: share some news that actually happened. If you have news, share it. I adopted a pet over the weekend, or my 6-year-old rode a bike for the first time yesterday. Believe it or not, most people actually want to know more about others, especially if they both work at the same company. If you're new to a company and are leading a team, for example, start your first meeting by going around the room and asking each person to say one interesting thing that recently happened in their lives. As a result of that momentary sharing, you've allowed everyone to feel more personally and genuinely connected with each other. The objective is to be genuine and not simply make something up. Otherwise, you run the risk of not knowing how to answer follow-up questions about something you have little or no experience with. Number 5 on the list of 7 techniques is talk early. Whether you're meeting in person or dialing in for a conference call, talk early. If you wait, 2 things will probably happen. 1, someone else will make the comment you wanted to make. Or 2, your more talkative colleagues will take over with their own follow-up questions. You'll get lost in the crosstalk and miss your chance. So I guess that's more of a group discussion tactic where you're not one-on-one. You want to say something to stand out in that group.
And
basically.
I think some people are afraid that they're going to be seen as talking too much. I really wouldn't worry about that. You give other people a chance to talk, certainly, but
well, if you're asking questions, you're not talking too much. If you're the one who's and you're right, it's a tough thing. If you don't want to be put somebody in a feeling like they're in an inquisition, right? You don't want to be that level of questioning, but at the same time, if you don't ask questions, you're never going to get anything valuable out of somebody. You're never going to get them to feel like they're being listened to, because without the right questions, there's not a conversation. There has to be a question. Number 6, it's not just what you say. No matter what or how much you say, your tone of voice, facial expression, and eye contact will broadcast so much more.
This is important for anybody having a political discussion. It's just think about how you're coming across to the other person, But of course, this isn't about politics. It's about everyday life.
Right.
And all the other cues and everything.
Yeah, in politics, this is not going. These tactics aren't going to help because usually you're just going to disagree with the person that you're talking to, and so getting further into that conversation will probably make them resent you. But in every other circumstance, this is good advice.
Right.
In person, look at the other person when you speak, not at the conference table or the wall. Now, it's funny that we have to tell people this, but it's true. Making a connection. This is one of the reasons I think I was telling you off the air why I will not allow Mark to broadcast from Mexico or something like that while we're here doing a show. I won't do remote shows with people because I can't make eye contact with somebody who's not here. And if I can't make eye contact, then to me it's not as good of a show.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree.
Even though Mark and I have almost not quite 20 years of rapport from working together. I'm sure we'd be fine if we did a remote show, but it wouldn't be the same for me. It wouldn't be the same experience for me. Mm-hmm. And if it's not the same experience for me, it's probably not going to be the same for the listener, would be my guess. Anyway, so look at the other person, not the conference table or the wall. That's like basic advice, and it's good advice. On the phone, smile. It will make your voice sound warmer. That's a really good technique.
Yeah, it does
smart.
come across while you're speaking.
It's absolutely smart. It's not just what you say, but how you say it. That will help others connect with you. Got one more tip coming up here on making small talk less small. We'll do that coming up on the way here on Free Talk Live. Our number, 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. And you can share your tips as well. It's Free Talk Live. It's Free Talk Live, and moments remain here. If you want to jump in to join the conversation, you're welcome to. Our number is 855-450-FREE. How do you take small talk and make it more meaningful? We're getting some tips from some Harvard researchers through an article at cnbc.com. With you in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
I'm Laurel.
Don't forget you can join us online. Head over to freetalklive.com and enjoy the features that we have on the site, including our podcast. You can go to feeds.freetalklive.com and subscribe to whichever podcast you prefer. We've got the sort of the full feed, which has our full shows, and the digests. Digests are 20 or 30-minute long episodes, which are kind of, digests of the previous night's show that Riley Blake from Utah puts together, and we thank him for that. But if you want the digest only, there's a feed for just the digest. If you want the full shows only, there's a feed for that. And then there's the full feed, which has them both. So check them out over at feeds.freetalklive.com and put them in your favorite podcast client. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. Some tips here from CNBC on having a better conversation in whatever the situation, whether it be in an elevator or in a business meeting or just with people in wherever you happen to be. Number 7 here is make the pivot. This is where small talk goes to the next level as you segue from talking about something small to the issue at hand. If the conversation's already flowing, it'll be easier than you think, and to ask follow-up questions. Your boss could be the one to make the first step. So tell me what's going on with X. Thanks to the small talk, you'll already be in sync. You can then pivot to a more meaningful discussion that showcases your knowledge, contribution, and confidence. For introverts, small talk can be painful. This section's called Just Do It. But if you say nothing in those moments before a meeting starts, or when you and your boss are in the elevator, you run the risk of becoming invisible. First, give yourself a break. Almost everyone is intimidated by others, especially those who outrank them. The author says, I remember feeling self-conscious when I met with a 4-star general at the Pentagon, and again feeling that way in a meeting with Britain's then Prime Minister David Cameron, but I took a deep breath and spoke up anyway. It's natural to defer to authority. You are who you are, and no one is expecting a soliloquy out of you. But when you make an effort to speak up, others will listen and connect with you.
Since I started my YouTube channel, there is somebody who asked me, he wanted me to do tips on how to talk to girls.
Oh, really?
And I was very surprised by his request, because I'm the last person to ask for relationship advice.
And as though there aren't a million, opinions about that already on the internet.
So, but I think that this article right here, just tips on how to begin making conversation with people, is really important. It seems like something sort of silly and trivial, but this is actually really important for somebody who's having trouble meeting people, whether it's somebody of the opposite gender or just somebody who's having any kind of challenges socially. I think so much of it is the first 10 minutes, just getting that conversation going. And then once you become comfortable, and it really just takes a few minutes, then your own personality can come and take over. But it's a hump that a lot of people have a lot of trouble getting over. So especially if somebody's having trouble meeting somebody of the opposite gender, this is it. Like all the things in this article, this is it. This is what you need to study.
Yeah, and there's nothing. Some people might look at these tips. And honestly, I'd like to see more. I'd like to see more of these suggested questions for this ACT, authenticity, connection, and taste. I think that some people could look at this and say, well, this is disingenuous. You're not being, the real you. But the reality is you need to step out of your comfort zone. If you are just being quiet because that's the natural way that you are, then as it says here, you may end up being overlooked. You're not conspicuous, especially in a business context. It's very, very important to be, to have whoever it is you're meeting with be aware that you're there and that you can ask good questions and you are thoughtful and you're thinking of things. So.
This is just training on socialization. It's nothing, and people. It's unfortunate that people see it as fake because. This is just how to be social with other people. It's not fake at all.
Right. It's part of being a better communicator and being a better person because you're not doing it. There's a cynical view of how to win friends and influence people, right? Like the title sounds kind of
manipulative.
Right. But the reality is we do want to have relationships with people. I mean, even antisocial people, even introverted people, still at some level they want to connect with people, right? They get energy for not being connected all the time. I get that. But in order to live in society, we have to be around other people. It's just that's how it is. So wouldn't you want those relationships to be better? Wouldn't you want people to feel better about encountering you and, having a relationship with you, whether it be a romantic one or a business one or just a neighborly one or whatever? And I'm not saying I'm the best at it. But it is something that is worth practicing. And some of it can be very, very basic. Like they said here in this article, make eye contact with the person you're talking to.
And practice is really key here. And one of the things I suggest for people if they're struggling socially is to go to typical situations where you're going to interact with a store clerk or a cashier. And then just make it a goal to make the cashier or the waitress or something smile.
Oh, yeah.
But you're not allowed to say, hey, I bet you'd look better if you smiled. Like, that's not allowed.
No, you can't mention it.
It's got to be something genuine like this. And if you make your goal, okay, I'm going to make this person genuinely smile about something in this 2-minute interaction, just keep practicing and keep practicing and keep practicing, and you'll find that you have an easier time interacting with people socially.
Yeah, I by no means, like I said, am I a pro at this or anything like that, but I find that one thing that helps with cashiers is to use their name. Because a lot of times, even though the name tag's right there, most customers won't use that person's name. And so there have been times when I'll just, I don't talk much during the interaction. It's just like just saying thank you and then that person's name or whatever. Or asking the person how they're doing, but putting their name in front of it, even though that's the disingenuous question we just said that you shouldn't use. But just using that person's name in whatever the question is or whatever the statement is, thank you or whatever, it'll get their attention. Because
they'll be surprised because nobody does it.
Right, and then it's like. Sometimes it's happened to where they're like, how did you know my name?
I've said, I've been the cashier and I'm like, how'd you know my name? They're like, you're wearing your name tag.
Yeah. And that's what leads them to smile, right? Because then they realize, oh, duh, of course. But it's a way for you to, humanize them, right? Like to acknowledge them as an individual, not just, this faceless cashier at mega corporation grocery store or whatever, but the individual who's there doing a job, in many cases a thankless one. So, saying thank you to waiters and waitresses and cashiers and using their name is one way to get that response.
Yep.
Let's go to your calls and thoughts here. We go to Sarah in New Mexico. You're on Free Talk Live. Hello, Sarah.
Yes, I have learned that most people will be an activist and work on things that they will benefit from.
No, really? You're telling me that people are self-interested?
Well, for example, like self-driving cars, like they feel that it's going to be here like maybe in 20 years and they'll be like gone by then. They might be like at 40 or 45 and then they'll be gone. So why would they feel like, why would I invest in this if I'm not going to be in the self-driving car? So that's my example. So what is wrong with being an activist that you're not involved with? Like, what's wrong with that?
Well, people can't find passion for things they're not interested in. So you can't find people generally who are going to take an interest in things that aren't interesting.
Yeah, I'm not going to coach like a little league baseball game because I just don't care.
Right.
I would be a terrible coach. I'd be like, yeah, just run around. Who cares?
There's a bunch of state house hearings that happen every single day, and I'm not interested in most of them. But a good activist would show up at as many as they possibly could if that was what their activism was.
The interest would say that you have something like, what about like environment? Would you be interested if you're concerned about grandkids? You might be 80 years old, but you're like, I love my grandchildren. I love my children. So
you
I
don't
want
have
them
grandchildren.
To have clean air. No, but I'm just saying. For example, I meet these ladies at the environmental committee at the church, and she's like 85 or 80 years old. But I love my grandkids. And I want them to have clean air and clean water. So it's got nothing to do with really her.
No. That's true. Somebody can absolutely say, I'm doing this for my children. I want to make a better world for my children. That's a fairly common activist motivation, I would say. So, yeah, it's not always internal, but still it's because they value their kids or their grandchildren is why they're doing that. It's still their own interests, and their kids are obviously one of their largest interests in their lives. That's just the way it is. Sarah, do you have any good questions for making small talk better? What do you like to ask when you meet somebody new?
When I meet somebody new, well, I'm just not concerned about it. You know what I mean? I'm either.
Do you say how are you?
I got my self-interest. I'm either I'm pushing the who's political directory, or I'm talking about the pedestrian fatalities.
See, you're just in it for you, aren't you, Sarah? Thanks for the call tonight. Appreciate it. Because, again, people love to talk about themselves. We'll see you tomorrow. Online in the meantime, you can join us over at freetalklive.com. LRN.FM now has a Discord. Discord is a free text and voice chat platform, and we now have our own server with a bunch of channels at discord.lrn.fm. You can join other listeners as they chat about various things during our live shows, or anytime, day or night. Discord software is available cross-platform, so you can have it on whatever device you want and take your chats anywhere. Join our Discord at discord.lrn.fm. That's discord.lrn.fm.